So here we go. Good evening again. Kaccayanagotta Sutta. This, I will read it and then we will talk about it. I will read it, then I will go through it and talk about it, and then I will stop and we will talk about it together. So this, to me, this is one of the most important of the suttas. I have heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's grove, Anapandika's monastery. Then Venerable Kaccayanagotta approached the Blessed One and, on arrival, having bowed down, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, he said to the Blessed One, "Lord, right view, it is said. To what extent is there right view? By and large, Kaccayana, this world is supported by polarity, that of existence and non-existence. But when one sees the origination of the world as it has come to be with right discernment, non-existence with reference to the world does not occur to one. When one sees the cessation of the world as it has come to be with right discernment, existence with reference to the world does not occur to one. By and large, Kaccayana, the world is in bondage to attachments, clingings and biases. But one such as this does not get involved with or cling to these attachments, clingings, fixations of awareness, biases or obsessions, nor is he resolved on myself. He has no uncertainty or doubt that mere stress when arising is arising. Stress when passing away is passing away. In this, his knowledge is independent of others. It is to this extent, Kaccayana, that there is right view. Everything exists, that is one extreme. Everything doesn't exist, that is the second extreme. Avoiding these two extremes, the Tathagata teaches the Dhamma via the middle. From ignorance as a requisite condition come fabrications. From fabrications as a requisite condition comes consciousness. From consciousness as a requisite condition comes name and form. From name and form as a requisite condition come the six sense media. From the six sense media as a requisite condition comes contact. From contact as a requisite condition comes feeling. From feeling as a requisite condition comes craving. From craving as a requisite condition comes clinging. From clinging as a requisite condition comes becoming. From becoming as a requisite condition comes birth. And from birth as a requisite condition, then aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress and despair come into play. Such is the origination of this entire mass of stress and suffering. Now, from the remainderless fading and cessation of that very ignorance comes the cessation of fabrications. From the cessation of fabrications comes the cessation of consciousness. From the cessation of consciousness comes the cessation of name and form. From the cessation of name and form comes the cessation of the six sense media. From the cessation of the six sense media comes the cessation of contact. From the cessation of contact comes the cessation of feeling. From the cessation of feeling comes the cessation of craving. From the cessation of craving comes the cessation of clinging. From the cessation of clinging comes the cessation of becoming. From the cessation of becoming comes the cessation of birth. And from the cessation of birth, then aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress and despair all cease. Such is the cessation of this entire mass of suffering. Wow. As I say, I think this is one of the most important suttas, one of the most important spiritual teachings ever, actually. So we'll pass it a little bit. Jeta's Grove, side story, Jeta's Grove is the place where there was a king who owned a bunch of land, and the Buddha and his folks wanted to get ready for the rain retreat, the rain retreat. Anapandika was a follower of the Buddha, and he knew the Buddha liked this place, and somehow there was a conversation with all these people involved. And the king said, "Okay, I'll tell you what, you can have that land and give it to the Buddha if you cover the entire ground with gold coins, put gold coins all over the place." So he did. And the story is he covered the whole of this large area with gold coins. except he ran out right up by the entranceway. So the king said, okay, that's close enough, and he built the entrance gate to this Jetta's Grove. So it's a very special place. So right view. What is right view? So Buddha's now going to explain right view. The middle way is not getting caught on the extreme of existence and not getting caught on the extreme of non-existence. And the way he talks about that is, he says, if one sees the origination of the world with right discernment, then non-existence with reference to the world does not come to be. See the origination of the world with right discernment, then non-existence does not occur to one. So right discernment, there are the 5 faculties, the 5 strengths, which are faith, effort, mindfulness, meditation, and discernment. Discernment is the highest. It's really discriminative wisdom. So if we really bring that to bear on how origination happens, then we cannot get stuck on emptiness. And he goes on to say, origination is simply the 12-fold chain of causation. It's dependent origination. That from ignorance, everything comes to be. And if we understand that, then the possibility of non-existence doesn't occur to one. So there's personal stories are necessarily limited, but hopefully this points the way. So there's a state of awareness which is a subjectless, objectless state of awareness, and it's kind of rippling. And I know before that, just in my gut and from everything I've read, and it's just there is the point awareness, which is the entire universe. That point awareness is beyond space, beyond time. Reference to space, reference to time are just meaningless. But somewhere, maybe just a little bit collapsed from that, is this subjectless, objectless kind of rippling. And Ajahn Chah talks about the 12-linked chain of causation. He says, yeah, you can follow all the 12 steps and it all makes sense. But the truth is, once it starts happening, then it's like falling out of a tree. You hit the ground and it hurts. So it's kind of hard to pass it. So what happens is, when the fluctuations get, and this is, as I said, limited stories, so that everybody will have their own way of looking at this, but when the fluctuations become, there's a touching, there's an extreme that happens there, there's suddenly subject and object separate and the whole thing collapses. And this is not internal, this is beyond internal, and then it becomes internal when subject and object start separating. Suddenly there's a me and an everything else, and everything explodes. So with right discernment, understanding origination with right discernment is having this direct experience of how there is no logical thinking, there is just this awareness, this subjectless, objectless awareness. And then a little pinprick of ignorance shows up out of that, and the whole thing explodes. So it's not, there's non-existence, it's just the whole thing is tied up in this dependent origination, and it's incomprehensible. Here's another sort of variation, a more clunky variation that just occurred while I was just sitting just now. So I play tricks on myself to help myself during the day, and one of the tricks I play is, if there's something I've got to remember to do before I go to bed at night, I'll scribble myself a note and I'll stick it on the bed, so that when I go into the bedroom it's sitting there. And there's a note sitting on the side of the bed, and I was sitting, no thought, and there's this mysterious half-formed thought of notes starts showing up. It's like, I'm just not interested, so just don't pay attention to it. But it keeps on fluttering in, and it keeps on fluttering in, and then I can't, and it's just on the edge of awareness, and I can't remember exactly what the cause was, but somewhere or other there was a shift in my awareness which created an opening. This floated in, and it was it's breakfast. It's putting milk and dried fruit and oats together and putting it in the fridge. Overnight oats for breakfast. That's the note. Don't forget to do that, because if you don't do it before you go to bed, it doesn't have its 8 hours to all soak and everything. So that just popped up, and as soon as that popped up, then there's oats, and then there's, we've got potluck on Sunday, so I need to go, we're going to be cooking, and so I need to go shopping tomorrow to get groceries, and so the whole thing just suddenly explodes. Once that first thought shows up, the whole thing explodes. So this is the dependent origination of once it starts, bang, you fall through all the branches, you hit the ground, and it hurts. When you see that, non-existence cannot occur to you. The flip of it is, when one sees cessation of the world as it's come to be with right discernment, existence with reference to the world does not occur to one. So we get into this, and he's got the 12 links building up from ignorance, and then he's got the 12 links breaking down. With the cessation of ignorance comes the cessation of fabrications, and so on. So once we start recognizing into being and the possibility of these links ceasing and the fabrication ceasing and the whole story of contact and clinging and craving ceasing, the possibility of existence does not occur, because all that there is in this mess that we call existence is actually dependent causation, dependent origination. It's all there is. There's no stuff. So existence can't occur to us once we start seeing this. So then he goes on. By and large, this world is in bondage to attachments, etc. And that's just the nature of how we are. We live in ignorance. We live in this dependent chain of causation. And as long as we're in there, there's always the next step that's going to hook us, then the next step and the next step. And there's this constant cycle of becoming that becomes birth, that becomes aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair. Is that right? It's pretty close. Suffering, dukkha. All of this leads to birth, and birth is not other than dukkha. So that's the nature of how we normally, as soon as there's a me, that's how this all happens, right? Nor is he resolved on myself, which there's a particular point to myself, but there's also this directional pointing at separation of subject and object, myself as opposed to everything else, separation of subject and object. Once that separation happens, all of this forms. If he's not resolved in myself, he has no uncertainty or doubt that mere stress when arising is arising. Mere stress is stress without reference to anyone or anything. Mere stress is simply clinging, craving. It's anything that is in this chain of formation. But there's no identity associated with it. It's just mere stress. And when it can be seen as mere stress, it can be released. And so that mere stress, what does he say? Stress when passing away is passing away. That mere stress when released passes away. And if it's just mere stress, we can see it arise and notice it and let it go and see it fade away. because we're not caught in the story. And this is the middle way. This is not getting caught on existence, because existence would take that mere stress and turn it into something. It's not caught on non-existence, because non-existence would deny that that mere stress happens. It does happen. So then we get into the long list of dependent origination, which is the mechanic of, it's both the mechanic of how this all happens, and it is also the description of what not being caught on existence and not being caught on non-existence actually looks like. On the one hand, it looks like it's this understanding of how what we think of as existence comes to be, out of what we think of as non-existence, and on the other hand, it's how that all comes to an end. Or not how that comes to an end, how the suffering associated with that comes to an end.